Hey, I'm Derek, it's me, Derek, and welcome to Stop Skeletons from Fighting. It's not a secret that I love 90s first-person shooter console ports. Wolf, Doom, Duke, Quake, they're not only fascinating on their own, they were a really big part of my childhood. And with a brand new Half-Life on the horizon, it is time for Punching Weight to pay respects to the late 90s stunner that moved the bar set by Doom and Quake before it, Half-Life. And before we get into that, we hit our Patreon pledge goal a few months ago, and we've been upgrading our gear. We got a new camera and a new camera. So if you want to help us continue to grow, patreon.com/stopskeletonsandfighting, or just keep watching the show, share the show, tell your friends. We appreciate everybody that supports this in every way. Anyway, Half-Life, which started with a modified Quake engine, sold millions and was a critical smash for having advanced everything. I mean, AI, in-game cutscenes, graphics. This game, for the time, the bar was just destroyed. It was insane. And that's just the main game. Then there's also mods like Counter-Strike and Team Fortress that became phenomenons in their own right. Half-Life's legacy cannot be overstated. And of course, as was the style of the time, a successful PC game, gotta get them console ports. But by the time Half-Life released, the PC space had been making gigantic graphical leaps. Bringing something like Half-Life to the consoles was fast becoming an issue. Because of this, the PS2 version is the only official port of the first Half-Life released. And it's a dinger! Certified dinger! But of course, there's more to this story, like the little-known extra campaign on this demo disc, and of course, the cancelled Dreamcast port. You see, when Half-Life launched in 1998, the best FPSs on consoles were GoldenEye, Turok 2 on N64, and a solid but still compromised port of Quake 2 on the PS1. On the cusp of the new millennium, there wasn't a console technologically advanced enough to run something like Half-Life. That is until the Sega Dreamcast. And here it is, the original console port of Half-Life. This is the disc. Yes, it is a burn because a real copy was never released. Announced in February 2000, two studios had hands on this project, Captivation Digital Laboratories and Gearbox Software. Captivation, who cut their teeth making early tech demos for the Dreamcast, were in charge of the main port grunt work. Gearbox, fresh off of the Opposing Force PC expansion, handled an exclusive new campaign, Blue Shift. Sierra promised higher polygon player characters, dramatic lighting, and special effects. Awesome. I mean, at this point, the Dreamcast was still a killer system, and ports like Quake 3 Arena ran great for the time. There was no reason to expect anything less than fantastic results. And then the delays happened. And then Sega announced the end of the Dreamcast in early 2001. And then the exclusive campaign Blue Shift got announced for the PC. And then, finally, Sierra canceled the port just a month before its June 2001 ship date, a move which, by the way, killed Captivation. It was canceled so last minute that the Prima Strategy Guide was still made and shipped to store shelves. Like, I got this literally for a penny, a cent at a GameStop because they were liquidating their inventory. Of course, canceled doesn't mean the port doesn't exist, at least in some form. Randy Pitchford himself has the gold version in his office, at least as of 2012. Luckily, late builds got released, and that's what I've got here. You don't need a modded Dreamcast, just put this disc in and it plays like any other game. And near as I can tell, this is a fully functioning, playable version of Half-Life. I don't know for sure if this is the finished gold version of the game, and I only bring that up because I gotta say, dude's got some load times, like 18 to 25 second load times, like, whoa. Now, I love the Dreamcast, and I can't deny that long load times on the system were really common, but what wasn't common was how frequently you have to sit through load screens like you do in this game. Like, you thought the beginning of Half-Life was long before, just from the opening tram section, like from menu to arrival, it has 6 loading breaks totaling 1 minute and 49 seconds of loading, and then from tram to test chamber is 5 more loading breaks totaling another 1 minute and 45 seconds, and then it's 2 more loading breaks after that before the action starts. It is over 4 minutes of loading before you get the handgun. Good stuff. What's worse is this game doesn't have autosaves or checkpoints, which I didn't realize until I died over an hour into the campaign and had to sit through all those load times again. But I do it again for the culture. And to be fair, you can pause and save anywhere, anytime in this game, so that's my bad. Save data amounts aren't standardized either. Once it was almost 100 units for a save, another time it was only 30, which makes a big difference for the VMU. You know what I mean? If you've ever tried to play mini games on it. Now, in terms of performance, the frame rate It's not amazing, but I'd say it runs about as well as Quake 3 or Unreal Tournament on the Dreamcast. Y'all know I've suffered through much worse. So bring snacks for them load times and be sure to save often. But yo, other than that, this is a solid port of Half-Life. I didn't play through the entire campaign because I didn't have to. In the Prima guide, there are level passwords, so I got to skip Zen and just hang out with the G-Man. The optimal way to play this version though is with the keyboard and mouse. Now in an earlier video, I said that this port doesn't have keyboard and mouse support, and I'm happy to report that, I was like super wrong about that. I don't know what I was doing, but hey, keyboard in port 1, mouse in port 2, and the controller with the VMU in 4, you'll be jump ducking and swinging your crowbar just like you were playing the PC. Without it though, you'll be stuck with the controller. And Captivation came through with some funky configurations. Now you'd think Half-Life with only 4 face buttons and 2 shoulder buttons would be rough. And you'd be right. But how developers handle this challenge is part of the fun of going back to these old ports. Here's a fun fact about Half-Life. There were 2 expansion packs, Opposing Force and Blue Shift. Both were made by Gearbox and both were released on PC. But Blue Shift was created for the Dreamcast port. And this version of Blue Shift is fully intact here on this Dreamcast build. So if you want to see Blue Shift in its original form, you absolutely can. Again, we didn't play the entire campaign, but we were able to skip to the end with password sheets from the guide. It's all here, man. Like, this port is basically finished and extremely playable, yet it was never released and Captivation went under because of it. The only thing unaccounted for is online or multiplayer of any kind. Multiplayer is briefly mentioned in the guide. It would have been its own separate game, but that obviously never came to pass. Luckily, console fans wouldn't have long to wait for a Half-Life port. Just a few months after the Dreamcast port's cancellation, Gearbox Software and Sierra Online released the PlayStation 2 port in November 2001, which Randy Pitchford himself even called the ultimate incarnation of Half-Life. Like, the back of the box promises unparalleled AI, incredible action, and extraordinary realism. You can find out more at GameOfTheYear.com. Grace, does anybody own GameOfTheYear.com?
Let me check.
Who owns?
Nope, it's up for grabs.
You can have GameOfTheYear.com for
$2,500.
$2,500. But playing these 2 ports back to back, PS2 looks and plays very similarly to the Dreamcast version. And given the reputation that Gearbox has had since, it makes me wonder how much of it was Gearbox's work and not just based on Captivation's. Though of course, the PS2 and Dreamcast were very different systems to develop for, but man, Captivation didn't even get to release a single game. That is such a bummer. All that work just for a mention in the special thanks credit. But them's the breaks. Murky history aside, the PS2 Half-Life is one phenomenal port. Frequent load times are still there, but are only 4 or so seconds. There's new outtakes and blooper dialogue recorded by Gearbox for this version, and a whole new co-op campaign, Decay. It even has new textures and models that were a bit of an upgrade from the pre-Source Engine remaster. The frame rate still drops all over the place, especially when you have the flashlight on, which, I expect. Though it is uncapped, so it could theoretically go all the way up to 60 FPS. Not that I was able to notice. Again, we do not have autosaves, so do not forget to save, but there are now quick saves. You don't even need a memory card for those. On a Dreamcast controller, this game is kind of a nightmare, but it's no sweat on a PS2 controller. However, if you still can't bring yourself to play Half-Life 1 on a controller, just plug in your Sony-branded PS2 mouse and keyboard. Okay, I'm just kidding. You actually don't need to hunt down rare accessories like you do for the Dreamcast, because you can plug in any USB mouse and keyboard to the USB slots. This is actually not as uncommon as you might think. You can do this for a few other PS2 games like Resident Evil Dead Aim. One exclusive PlayStation 2 thing I didn't like was this weird auto-aim reticle. The idea is that when it snaps onto an enemy, hitting O locks you onto the enemy. I guess dual analog aiming was still a new concept in 2001, and more often made me think I was aiming at an enemy when I wasn't. It was especially confusing when me and Grace did co-op, which is another big get for this package. Yep, the Dreamcast got an exclusive new Gearbox campaign, and so did the PS2. In Decay, you play as the scientist from the training hazard area, Dr. Cross, and a new character, Dr. Green. They're the scientists who are in the other 2 hazard suits and who push the Zen crystal sample up to Gordon in the test chamber. Yeah, in Blue Shift, you play as the guard locked outside in the beginning, and then in Decay, you play as the other 2 people in the suits. And now Decay centers around a lot of puzzles and set pieces that you have to work together with your partner to solve. Mostly like pressing buttons so that the other can get through an obstacle, that kind of thing. Now, Grace and I have an age difference. We grew up playing different games. But she assured me, no. Half-Life, that's a game I know. I definitely know that game. I played it before. And it was lies! Decay is divided into several missions. Missions are short, but don't have checkpoints. So if your partner can't back up her talk and dies, it's back to the very start. You are graded at the end of each mission, and if you manage to finish the entire campaign with all A's, which, we didn't.
I'm so embarrassed.
And you should be. You unlock a special co-op mission as a Vortigaunt, and you can play the entire Half-Life campaign as a Vortigaunt. Vortigaunt?
Vortigaunt.
Vortigaunt, okay.
Yeah.
You know what, I'm not...
You double check with me every time.
You know what, leave that in, because sometimes Uncle Derek makes mistakes. You can even play Decay by yourself if you want to, by pushing select. You can switch between the two characters. The other character won't move on their own, but they will defend themselves, which is kind of nice, but can really eat up your ammo really fast. We had a lot of fun with this mode, and if you want to experience it for yourself, Decay was fan ported to the PC in 2008, even using the PS2 dialogue audio files. This version doesn't have split screen though, it's only online, but I'd still recommend it. And that's not where the special features end. We got deathmatch, multiplayer deathmatch, split screen deathmatch on maybe the smallest maps I've ever seen. I mean, this ain't no time splitters, but hey, it's a cool addition. This game also apparently supports full 16:9 mode, which I could not get to work over a component. Seriously, I switched my crappy Insignia TV settings, I set the PS2 to 16:9. I did everything I thought I could do, and I got nothing. So if you know how to do it, let me know. Built from the solid foundation of the Dreamcast port and loaded with special features, PS2 Half-Life is one hell of a package, but I still haven't even talked about the coolest part. You know how so many PC to console ports at one point or another had rumors of mod support, and that almost never actually happened? Well, the mad lads who made the PS2 Half-Life actually did it. There's mod support on this game, except they made it a secret that took almost a decade to uncover. Inside this unassuming PlayStation Underground demo disc from the US PlayStation Magazine issue number 57, there is a genuine treasure. And I'm not just talking about the demo of Fatal Frame. You see, there's a behind the scenes hype reel for the Half-Life PS2 port on this disc, which mentions the following.
The mods will be coming to the PlayStation 2 as well. In fact, Underground viewers will be the first to get the latest Half-Life mod, Uplink, and it's only available on the PlayStation 2.
Okay, there's a lot of problems with that statement. First of all, this is the only mod that came to the PS2 port, and this mod in question, Uplink, is not a mod. It was a demo. Also, it was released in 1999, which doesn't exactly make it the latest anything.
The Uplink mod is hidden on this issue of the Underground, so it's up to you to find it.
Oh, you hear that right there? That was the biggest problem. The code wasn't in the magazine or even hidden on this disc somewhere. I'm not sure where this code was ever printed, or if it ever was. The code to unlock Uplink on the PS2 was found years after the fact by accident when fans were porting Decay to the PC. I feel so bad for the Gearbox people that took the time to port Uplink to the PS2 because no one could play it even if they had known it existed. But still, how it's done is pretty awesome. You put in Half-Life PS2, you go to the cheats menu, you input this code, go to the extras, the disc drawer opens up, you put in the PlayStation demo disc, and then bam! Console gaming mod life, baby! And this gives the term on-disc DLC a whole new meaning. Uplink itself is cobbled together from content and features cut from the final version of Half-Life, and it's basically a new campaign in its own right, so it's so genuinely cool to be able to play this and experience it on the PS2 along with its new visuals. This has to be one of the wildest official uses of the PS2 I've ever heard of outside of streaming Netflix in Brazil. It's just a shame that it wasn't better publicized. But that's gonna be it for now. There are more Half-Life ports, and I guess, well, they're making Half-Life games again. They might make a third one, so we might have to make a second Half-Life video? Absolutely. This was voted on by our Patreon supporters, and which, by the way, we have cleared that goal, and we're almost at the next goal. If you want to help support Stop Skeletons by supporting us, by pledging on Patreon, $1 gets you a name, gets your name and thanks credits right here, and $2 lets you be a part of the Discord, part of the activity feed, part of the Bone Dungeon, Bone Nation,
Yeah.
the Boner Zone. Yeah.
Boner zoner.
Also our monthly podcast. And then, yeah, we got others, just $1 or $2, $3, however you want to support. If you also don't want to do that, hey, tell a friend, share this video, let people know, or just keep watching. Give us the thumbs, let us know how you feel about the video. We'll be back with more videos, always working on videos. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.